Hey traders, it's Chris here. So we're going to talk about Tesla today. It has crossed the Rubicon by producing 4 quarters that were profitable, and that makes it eligible for S&P inclusion, which is actually a very big thing, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So one of the biggest questions on traders' minds, particularly retail traders' minds right now, is Tesla a bubble? Is it going to 2K? Some projections are upward of $7,000. It's just gotten so much attention. So we're going to kind of dive into this. We're going to talk about the fundamentals. We're going to talk about technicals. We're going to talk about some ways that you can trade it. So make sure you watch all the way through the video. Before you do that, go ahead and hit that like button. Give it a little pat there so it turns blue. Let YouTube know that you like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. It gives us a little bit of love with the YouTube algorithm, and then they give it back to our channel. It allows us to keep doing videos like this to help you improve your trading performance. So we really appreciate that. And also, speaking of appreciation, I just want to say thanks to the community for the birthday well wishes. I had my birthday last week, and I got to do a little camping trip, which was quite an adventure, and I was just very grateful for all the love that came from the community, members and non-members. Just a lot of people saying thank you to us, and it makes me feel really appreciative that I'm having a positive effect on your trading career and your mindset and teaching you how to make money from the market. So thank you for all the birthday wishes. I really appreciate it. Okay, so getting into some of the fundamentals for Tesla, one of the things I want to talk about that came out in their Q2 results was just how much money they made from EV credits. This is what they get. They get electrical vehicle credits as an automotive maker, and they get to sell these credits to other companies if they want to. And there's a great chart right here that shows that over the last 6 quarters, if Tesla wasn't able to sell those EV credits, they would have been losing money 5 out of the last 6 quarters, including the last 3. So their core product, which is a car and the software to go with it, isn't making them really any money. The bulk of their income actually has to do from EV credits. To me, that's not necessarily the best way to run an auto business. If it's what gets you over the hump, I totally get it. You have to use everything to your advantage and use all your products. But if your core product that everybody knows you for, which is your car and your software, is not actually getting you into profitable territory, and it's just this little thing called EV credits, well, eventually that is going to phase out. So, what's that going to mean for Tesla if it didn't have that the last 6 quarters, or if in the future they're not able to collect as many credits from this going forward? That leaves me a little bit doubtful about this as a product long term. Now, moving over to Robinhood Traders. So Robinhood Traders have been gobbling up Tesla stock in droves, and just in the last several days, about 40,000 Robinhood traders have started accumulating positions in Tesla. And so they've been tracking, this is one of the stocks that they've been tracking really well. As you can see, as it's been rising since the March bottom, as you can see in the chart here, they've been tracking the stock really, really well. So this is one of the stocks that Robinhood traders are tracking really, really well. They got their finger on the pulse, and they've just been accumulating a large position. As of right now, we have about 526,000 Robinhood traders that are holding positions on Tesla. And this is even as Tesla peaked at its all-time highs and then sold off a little bit since then. It's down about a few $100s from its all-time highs around 1,800, and yet they've been adding more and more positions. So more and more Robinhood traders are getting long. In fact, if you look at just in popularity changes, in the last 24 hours, Tesla is the #2 stock in terms of the most accumulated stock over a 24-hour period. So 23,000 traders have accumulated positions in Tesla in just the last 24 hours. So that means that they're just coming in more and more in droves. They're continuing to buy it up. And that means that there's a lot of retail traders that if this thing starts to tank, you're going to see a lot of bag holders that are going to start unwinding their positions or looking for ways to protect their position. But right now, protection is expensive. It's not cheap. So we're going to talk about protecting your position if you are long, various ways that you can protect your position to neutralize risk and hedge some of your position. We'll get into that, and also different ways that you can profit from it going forward. But I just want to really note that the heavy presence, this is one of the millennials' fan favorite stocks. And so if this starts to lose ground and starts to drop further and further, you could see some serious unwinding in the stock, because when traders are levered up on a particular stock and they just keep accumulating more and more and more as it goes up, all it takes is a little bit of a shift for them to start unwinding their positions just to protect some of their other positions. And so they're going to start unwinding positions. If we were to see a 10% drop in Tesla stock, you can see the selling start to come out really, really fast. Although I'm sure there will be some dip buyers because people just seem to be perpetual fans of Tesla. You're going to see traders start to unwind their positions if this starts to drop, especially the ones that are already underwater that bought above 1500, above the current prices right now. How much pain can they really take on this? You know, if it drops $200, $300, $400, how much pain will they be able to take before they're forced to liquidate their positions? And on top of it, them wanting to get protection on their position will also further fuel the downside. So the question is, hey, is Tesla a bubble? Is it going to 2K? Let's talk about that. Let's look at some charts. Okay, so let's take a look at the chart on Tesla. Let's get into some of the technicals. Let's talk about where I think it's going. What do I see in the price action and ways that you can trade it? So here's the March bottom right over here, March 16th. And you're talking that it was hit a low of 357. And in last week, it hit a high just shy of 1800. So you're talking almost a 500% return. Now, keep in mind, Tesla is only 0.8% of the auto market. They don't make a whole lot of vehicles. And yet, just in the last several months, they've increased their market cap by 8 Ford Motor Companies, which is absolutely insane. This particular run is one of the biggest runs I've seen in any particular stock in history. And so I am leaning towards this being more of a bubble, and I'll talk about why. That doesn't mean that Tesla can't go to 2K. In 1999, tech stocks were in a bubble, and that lasted over a year before it started to unwind. So things can remain in a bubble for a long period of time, but I am seeing some cracks, some little kinks in the armor in the price section that I want to get into here. So as you can see, Tesla had what I call a parabolic run. That's where it's just increasing exponentially. And anytime you see a parabolic run, there is usually a very big sell-off. Tesla already had one parabolic run earlier, so it peaked at about 965 and then sold off in a matter of about a month from 965 to 357. So, you know, dropped about $600 in just a month. And that's very characteristic of parabolic moves to unwind very, very fast. A couple examples of parabolic moves. Palladium was a big one recently, that this had a very, very large parabolic move here, and then it unwound a lot of those gains, almost half of its gains in just a matter of weeks. Everybody is very familiar with Bitcoin. You know, that same thing, it showed this parabolic price action that you see here, this very large curvature, and it hasn't recovered that. So Tesla is showing some of that parabolic price action. It did it once before, and then this is an even larger extension here. Now, usually some of the characteristics of parabolic moves is that the last few candles leading up to it are the largest. And the reason being is because everybody's all in. Everybody's got FOMO, a fear of missing out. They think it's just going to go higher, and they're willing to buy high and sell higher as long as the train keeps going. But eventually you get so much participation that there really isn't anybody else to get long at that certain point. And so that's when things start to unwind. And we did see that. We saw the two largest weekly bars prior to the selling. That is generally a good characteristic of a parabolic move, is that you have these wide range bars because everybody's just buying it, panic buying it, and it creates this huge weekly ranges in this case here. So what is interesting to note though is that after having those two large range bars and hitting 1800, it had a down week, and then this week is also interesting. It tried to rally intra-week but has since sold off. Keep in mind, yesterday after the market closed is when the Q2 earnings came out, and it didn't see a panic rush of buying, which is very, very interesting because anytime there was positive news over the last few months, Tesla just went gangbusters. You know, it turned on the hyperdrive and it just shot up every single time. But then when we look at, you know, some of the intraday timeframes here, the news came out after market. So this is the aftermarket, and it shot up a little bit, but has since sold off. So why aren't people just buying in droves when there's been such positive news? Every single positive news story that happened before, it was just an excuse to buy it and push it higher. That leaves me a little concerned. Are people overextended? Are institutional players starting to take profit and sell their positions? You generally don't see that, especially since such a big news came out of them having their fourth quarter profit. That makes Tesla eligible for S&P inclusion. Now, why is that? Why is S&P inclusion such a big thing? What's the key thing behind that that would really be beneficial for Tesla stock? Well, getting included into the S&P, which is not right now. The thing about it is that the S&P 500 is heavily traded by a lot of passive index funds. If Tesla does get included into the S&P 500, then those passive index funds that have exposure and want to maintain exposure and plan on maintaining exposure to the S&P 500 index will have to start accumulating Tesla shares. So that's one of the big things about it, is that if it does get included, then that could create a whole new flock of buyers in terms of the stock, and that could send it up to 2,000 very easily. So this is a very, very big deal, and yet it seems like somebody rained on the parade a little bit here. So that to me is a little bit odd that it hasn't really responded in the way that a lot of people expected with such positive news. Okay, so how do we trade it? If you want to trade Tesla, if you want to be in the bull side, if you want to short Tesla, how can we trade Tesla? How can you trade it? What's the best way to do it here? So a couple things I want to point out. The shares are incredibly expensive right now, in my opinion. And so if you wanted to be long Tesla, I really don't think that this would be a good time to be buying it. This is just my opinion, partially because of the parabolic price action, and it's just a little bit expensive. I think there needs to be a pullback on this. I wouldn't want to chase this right now, so I would like to see a little bit of a pullback. Now let's look at the 4-hour chart at some possible buy locations, key support levels that I think need to hold. So one kind of support zone that I would really like to hold, if I had a long bias on this one here, would be this little role reversal over here. So this was resistance before we kind of built a breakout structure, and then we thrusted through that huge breakout move, tested as support several times, and have held, launched a little bit, got to 1712, and then now are coming back to it again. So this kind of zone between 1459 and about 1410, that is a potentially good buy zone in my opinion. This is one of the first zones that, if this is going to form a corrective structure at the top here and kind of use this as a launching pad to get higher. So here's the corrective structure. So if it's going to use this corrective structure, play inside this range, take some profits, and then try and accumulate positions for the next run up, potentially towards 2000, this zone is one of the first zones to do that. Now the next base of support, sadly, I think is a little bit lower here. So you had a little bit of a breakout structure here, and you kind of see, we tested resistance, built up position towards it, weaker rejections, and then just launch right through it. And we never even got back. So there is some potential support, possibly. I mean, you could see at the base of this structure at 1361, but because this was such a rapid move, there isn't a whole lot of liquidity. It creates this kind of liquidity vacuum because there really wasn't a whole lot of positions or order flow or history at those levels that, from this 1028 up to 1400. So I don't see this area acting as any sort of huge support. I think if it really starts to lose, 1300, then we could see a move down to 1050, 10 and a quarter before it finds support again. So that's another major support zone. And there is also this kind of prior resistance, which turns support here. So this was the prior parabolic run, which is 946, double top there, then sold off. And then when it kind of broke through, it kind of used this as a launching pad for the next run. So there is a little bit of a vacuum if you want to get long. You have this zone right here between, low 14, mid 1400s. But there's not a whole lot of history or order flow between that and 1050, 10 and a quarter. So you might have to wait a little bit. If you don't want to take this current zone, then you might want to wait a little bit and wait for a little bit of a bigger drop before getting long. At that point, $1,000 Tesla could be a very good value buy. Now, if you're bearish, then where would you want to look to sell? So some potential sell locations, I think this is a pretty good location right here, but this kind of 1686 to 1715 spike here. So that's kind of this zone right here. And then of course you have the all-time highs. We're just shy of 1800. So you could go short shares if you can borrow the shares depending upon your brokerage. So that is a potential option. These are the two zones obviously that are going to offer some sort of resistance. It's a little anemic up here. We only have a little bit of history here. You're talking 8 hours of price action, above this, and then not much above it. The rest is all below it. You do have this kind of classic double top pattern here between 1684 and 1715. So that is a potential sell zone if you want to trade the underlying directly and short the stock. Now, there are a couple other ways to play it if you didn't want to put up the massive capital required to accumulate a decent sized share position in the stock. You could trade options. And so if you were on the bearish side and you wanted to use these levels, well, then you could initiate a bear call spread. So that is a vertical spread trade. It's a credit spread trade, which means that you receive a credit for writing this particular option. Basically what you'd be doing is buying an out of the money call and then selling a closer call towards the current price, either in the money, at the money, or just slightly out of the money. So you'd be selling one call and buying another. And if you wanted to, you could use these levels. If you don't think that the market's really going to get above this, well, then you could buy your out of the money call just above, the all-time highs, You could sell the calls above this zone, and if you don't think that the market's going to get back above it by the time it expires, you would get to keep the full credit. One of the advantages of this strategy is the fact that IV, implied volatility, right now is really, really high in the stock because the stock's been moving so much. So because you'd be selling a credit spread, you'd be collecting that premium, that high premium right now because of the implied volatility. I personally wouldn't want to be buying outright puts or calls on this simply because of the fact that I just mentioned implied volatility is high. So that makes the cost of buying outright calls or buying outright puts very expensive. Now, if you're bullish, you could just take the other side of the credit spread. You could do a bull put spread, which is you sell an in the money put and then you buy a further out of the money put. And so if you think that this zone is going to hold, well, then you could sell one put, just below this zone and then buy a further out of the money put. Again, it's a credit spread. You're going to collect a credit on that there. And so you'll be benefiting from the high implied volatility, which will lead to higher premiums that you will collect from that. So that is one potential way to play it. So that's it. So we've gone over the fundamentals. We've gone over some of the internals. We've gone over why being included into the S&P 500 is such a big thing for Tesla. We've gone over the price action, and we've gone over potential ways you can trade it if you want to trade the underlying shares, or if you want to trade it via options on the bull or the bear side, or you want to hedge your long position right now. So we've given you a lot of options here. And so I hope you've enjoyed this and learned something about this. If you'd like to learn more, check us out at secondskiesforex.com. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. And please make sure to leave a like on the button there. Hit that little button there so it turns blue. And leave a comment below what you learned from this and what you got out of this. We really, really appreciate that. So if there are other things you'd like us to focus on, other stocks you'd like us to do a video on, let us know in the comments below. Other than that, good luck trading, and I'll see you in the next video.